The stage was dark. The audience buzzed with anticipation. The year was 1956, and the air was thick with excitement. Then the lights flickered, and a figure stepped forward, his slicked-back hair gleaming under the spotlight. He was Elvis Presley, and he was about to change everything. Elvis Presley wasn't just a singer. He was a force of nature. When he stepped onto the stage at the Louisiana Hayride, the crowd went wild. His hips swayed, his voice soared, and the girls screamed. This was rock and roll, and Elvis was its king. But behind the fame and the glory, there was a story that began long before that fateful night. Elvis was born on January 8, 1935, in Tupelo, Mississippi. From the moment he was born, music was his world. His parents, Gladys and Vernon, sang all the time whether they were in church, at home, or putting their baby to sleep. Little Elvis loved it. He would run down the aisle of the church, trying to sing with the choir, even though he didn't know the words. He just knew he had to be a part of it. Life wasn't easy for the Presleys. They were poor, and money was always tight. But music was free, and it brought the family together. Elvis's father, Vernon, had a beautiful baritone voice, and his mother, Gladys, was always there to guide him. They sang gospel, country, and even some pop. Elvis soaked it all in, dreaming of the day he would make his own music. When Elvis was 10, he got his first taste of the spotlight. He entered a talent contest at the Tupelo State Fair and sang Red Foley's Old Shep. He was so small that he had to stand on a chair to reach the microphone. He didn't win, but he won the hearts of the audience. His parents saw his potential and bought him a guitar for his 11th birthday. They arranged lessons, but Elvis preferred to learn on his own. He would sit for hours, strumming the strings and dreaming of becoming a star. Elvis's musical tastes were as diverse as they were deep. He loved the gospel music of the Statesmen, the emotional harmonies of the Blackwoods, and the soulful sounds of the Soul Stirrers. He was captivated by the showmanship of the Statesmen, who wore bright, colorful clothes and moved with such energy that the audience couldn't help but jump to their feet. He also admired the smooth phrasing of Dean Martin, the emotive style of Bing Crosby, and the raw power of R&B artists like Arthur, Big Boy, Crudup, and Wynonie Harris. But it wasn't just the music that drew Elvis in. It was the way it made people feel. Music had the power to lift people out of their struggles, to bring them together, and to make them forget their troubles, even if just for a moment. Elvis knew that he wanted to do that for others. He wanted to be the one who could make people feel something. In 1948, the Presleys moved to Memphis, Tennessee, where Elvis's life took a new turn. They lived in a small apartment in Lauderdale Courts, a housing project for low-income families. The living conditions were tough, but the community was tight-knit. Elvis found a new world of music in Memphis. The city was a melting pot of gospel, blues, and country, and it was here that Elvis truly found his voice. One hot, humid morning in June 1953, Elvis walked into Sun Studios on Union Avenue. He was just 18, but he was determined to be discovered. He paid to record a demo, hoping that the right person would hear it. That person was Sam Phillips, the owner of Sun Records. Phillips was looking for a white singer who could capture the soul and feel of African-American music. When he heard Elvis's recordings, he knew he had found his man. Elvis's first single, That's All Right, was released in 1954. It was a blend of country, blues, and gospel, and it was unlike anything anyone had heard before. The song was a hit, and Elvis's career was launched. He began performing on local radio and television, and his reputation grew. People were drawn to his unique style, his charismatic presence, and his ability to connect with the audience. By 1956, Elvis was a sensation. He appeared on national television, released hit after hit, and became the face of rock and roll. His music was a blend of all the styles he had grown up with, and it spoke to a generation of young people who were looking for something new, something that reflected their own experiences and emotions. Elvis Presley was more than just a singer. He was a cultural icon, a symbol of the changing times. He was the one who taught a generation how to love rock and roll, and he was the one who would forever be remembered as the king of rock and roll. The stage was his kingdom, and he ruled it with a passion that could not be denied. The world was about to change, and Elvis Presley was at the center of it all. Elvis Presley's life was a mix of dreams, insecurities, and a burning desire to be someone special. Growing up, he was a shy and different kid who didn't fit in. His mother, Gladys, was his rock, always encouraging him and making him feel special. She was the center of his world, and he was the center of hers. This bond gave Elvis the confidence to chase his dreams even when the world seemed against him. Music was Elvis's sanctuary. He played and sang whenever he could, for family, friends, and anyone who would listen. He attended concerts like other kids went to sports games, soaking up the atmosphere and learning from the pros. For Elvis, music was a way to shine and win praise. It was a place where he could be the best at something, a place where he could be a star, but being different came with a price. At Hume's High School, Elvis was often the target of jokes and pranks. His long hair, bright clothes, and unique style made him stand out, and not always in a good way. His high school buddy, Red West, remembered how the other kids would try to cut Elvis's hair, and how they would call him a squirrel because of his wild appearance. Despite the cruelty, Elvis never forgot those moments. They fueled his determination to prove himself. Elvis found inspiration in the people around him. He admired truck drivers, who seemed to be loners like him. He grew sideburns to look like them, and he copied their style. He was also drawn to the vibrant culture of Beale Street, where African-American musicians perform. He loved their music, their style, and their confidence. He dreamed of buying flashy clothes at Lansky's on Beale Street, and of singing like the gospel artists he admired. Elvis was also influenced by the rebellious characters in movies. James Dean, Marlon Brando, and Tony Curtis were his idols. He copied their looks and attitudes, spending hours in front of the mirror perfecting the Dean sneer. He even memorized Dean's lines from Rebel Without a Cause. Elvis believed that being sullen and brooding was what girls liked, and he worked hard to embody that image. Despite the attention his appearance brought, Elvis was still shy. His high school sweetheart, Dixie Locke, remembered how he would do anything to call attention to himself, but it was more about proving something to himself than to others. Inside, he knew he was different, and he believed he was destined for greatness. Elvis's big moment came in high school, when he performed in a talent show. He walked shyly to the microphone and started singing. The audience was surprised and then captivated. For the first time, people who weren't his family showed him love and approval. It was a turning point for Elvis. He thrived on stage, and it gave him the confidence he needed to pursue his dreams. By the time Elvis graduated from high school, his dream was clear. He knew he wanted to be a singer, and he was determined to make it happen. His mother's support and his own belief in his destiny gave him the courage to walk into Sun Studios in 1953. It wasn't just a whim or a coincidence, it was a mission. Sun Studios, run by Sam Phillips, was a place where local talent could shine. Phillips was known for his willingness to record any promising singer, regardless of their style or appearance. He had already found success with artists like B.B. King and Jackie Brenston. The studio's success was tied to the economic and social changes in Memphis, a city that was growing and thriving in the post-war years. The rise of Sun Records was a reflection of the city's spirit and its diverse music scene. When Elvis pulled up to Sun Studios, he saw the sign that read, "The legendary Sun Recording Studio, 706 Union." It was a moment of destiny. Sun Studios had given other unknown artists their big break, and Elvis believed it could do the same for him. He was ready to take the first step toward his dream, a dream that would soon change his life forever. Elvis walked into Sun Records on a warm summer morning in 1953, his heart pounding with excitement and nerve. He was just a young man, fresh out of high school, but he had a dream. He wanted to be a singer, and he believed that this moment was his chance to make it happen. Marion Kasker, the receptionist, was the first to greet him. She noticed his long, greasy hair and shy demeanor. When he told her he wanted to make a record, she explained the cost and asked him what kind of singer he was. Elvis, confident and a bit naive, replied, "I sing all kinds." When she asked who he sounded like, he simply said, "I don't sound like nobody." Elvis paid his money and was led to the recording booth. Sam Phillips, the owner of Sun Records, set him up in front of the microphone. Elvis chose two ballads, "My Happiness" and "That's Where Your Heartaches Begin," to record. His voice was earnest, but lacked the spark that Phillips was looking for. Despite this, Kasker noted in Elvis's file, "Good ballad singer, hold." Over the next few months, Elvis kept coming back to Sun Records, always asking Kasker if any bands needed a singer. Each time she had to say no, but she promised to keep him in mind. In January 1954, Elvis paid to record 2 more songs, "I'll Never Stand in Your Way" and "It Wouldn't Be the Same Without You." Still, nothing happened. He was starting to feel desperate. Then, on June 26, 1954, the phone rang. It was Marion Kasker. She asked if Elvis could come to the studio that afternoon. He rushed over, his heart racing with hope. Phillips had a song called "Without You," and thought Elvis might be a good fit. Elvis tried his best, but it just didn't work. Phillips asked him to try other songs, but nothing clicked. Despite this, Phillips saw something in Elvis, a passion and unique style that intrigued him. Phillips decided to bring in Scotty Moore, a local guitar player, to jam with Elvis. Scotty and his bass player, Bill Black, met Elvis at Scotty's house on the 4th of July. They practiced some chords and played a few songs, but Scotty and Bill weren't particularly impressed. However, Phillips wasn't ready to give up. He invited them to Sun Studios the next day for a recording session. On the night of July 5th, Elvis, Scotty, and Bill arrived at Sun Studios. They played for hours, trying different songs, but nothing seemed to catch Phillips's attention. Then around midnight, Elvis started fooling around with "That's All Right, Mama," an old rhythm and blues song. He sang it with energy and enthusiasm, and Bill and Scotty joined in. Phillips heard it and knew he had something special. This version was different from the original. It was faster, lighter, and had a unique blend of country and rhythm and blues. Next, they recorded an up-tempo version of Bill Monroe's "Blue Moon of Kentucky." This song was also transformed, with a high-energy feel that captured the spirit of rhythm and blues. Phillips was thrilled and quickly got a demo of the record to Dewey Phillips, a popular disc jockey in Memphis. Dewey played the record on his show, and the response was overwhelming. Kids called in, wanting to hear it again and again. The record started getting airplay on other Memphis stations, and it became a hit. Sam Phillips moved quickly, pressing and distributing the record. He also worked out a deal with Elvis, Scotty, and Bill. Scotty would manage the group and get 10%, and the remaining profits would be split between Elvis, Scotty, and Bill. As the record gained popularity, Elvis and his band started getting more attention. They played at local clubs, and even opened for Slim Whitman at the Overton Shell Park. Before the concert, Elvis was interviewed by a local newspaper. He was nervous and didn't say much, but the article painted him as a rising star. The publicity photo showed a young Elvis with greasy hair, a cowboy suit, and a determined look on his face. Elvis's journey had just begun, but he was already making waves. His unique sound and magnetic presence were starting to capture the hearts of teenagers in Memphis, and soon the whole world. The day Elvis Presley stepped onto the stage at Overton Park Amphitheater on July 30th, 1954, was a turning point in his life. He was nervous, terrified even, but he was determined to prove himself. Standing next to him were his friends, Scotty Moore on guitar and Bill Black on bass. The crowd was huge, and Elvis felt the weight of all those eyes on him. For a moment they just stood there, staring out at the sea of faces. Scotty later remembered, "We were scared to death. All those people and us with these 3 little funky instruments." But then they started playing "That's All Right, Mama," and something magical happened. Elvis was so nervous that he was shaking on the balls of his feet, and his leg was moving rhythmically with the music. His baggy pants made his movements look wild and exaggerated, and the audience went wild. Young girls were screaming and clapping, and Elvis was shocked. He didn't know what to make of it. "I was scared stiff," he later admitted. "It was my first big appearance in front of an audience, and I came out and I was doing my first song. And everybody was hollering, and I didn't know what they were hollering at." After the first song, Elvis and his bandmates ran offstage, trying to figure out what just happened. Elvis's manager told him, "They were hollering because you were wiggling your legs." When Elvis went back out for an encore, he did a little more, and the crowd went even wilder. He realized that his natural movements on stage were exactly what the audience wanted. Throughout the rest of the summer, Elvis's record could be heard everywhere in Memphis. It was playing on car radios, jukeboxes, and at home in teenagers' bedrooms. Sam Phillips, the owner of Sun Records, was working hard to promote Elvis. He drove around the South, selling copies of the record to disc jockeys, jukebox operators, and retailers. He even sent a copy to a friend at Billboard, who reviewed it on August 7th. Presley is a potent new chanter who can sock over a tune for either the country or the R&B markets. By August 28th, Blue Moon of Kentucky had made it onto the Billboard Country and Western regional charts. Elvis and his band played at clubs, high schools, and community events within a 75-mile radius of Memphis. They performed in Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas. No matter where they played, Elvis loved every minute of it. He worked hard to improve his stage presence, and Scotty and Bill gave him tips on how to hold his guitar, stand in front of the microphone, and interact with the audience. Elvis's movements were a mix of natural and calculated, and he quickly learned what got the crowd excited. By the end of the summer, Sam Phillips was focused on promoting Elvis's career. He landed a gig for Elvis, Scotty, and Bill on the Grand Ole Opry in October. The Opry, broadcast from Nashville's Ryman Auditorium, was a big deal in country music. Elvis was excited to perform on the same stage as country legends, but the audience, older and more traditional, wasn't sure what to make of Elvis's wild style. They weren't invited back, but it didn't stop Elvis. Next, Sam Phillips got Elvis a spot on the Louisiana Hayride, a popular radio show broadcast from Shreveport. The Hayride reached a wide audience, and Elvis and his band, now known as the Blue Moon Boys, performed well enough to land a contract. This allowed them to quit their day jobs and focus on music full-time. People who saw Elvis perform in those early days never forgot the experience. Buddy Holly and his friend Jerry Allison, who later formed the Crickets, saw Elvis in Lubbock, Texas, and were blown away. Jerry remembered, all Buddy wanted to do was sing like Elvis. Bob Luman, a successful country singer in the late 1950s and 60s, saw Elvis in Kilgore, Texas, and was amazed. This cat came out in red pants and a green coat and a pink shirt and socks, and he had this sneer on his face, Luman recalled. He stood behind the mic for 5 minutes, and then he hit his guitar a lick, and he broke 2 strings. The high school girls were screaming and fainting and running up to the stage. It was during one of these performances in New Boston, Texas, that Colonel Tom Parker, a former Carney pitchman, noticed Elvis. Parker was impressed by Elvis's energy, the way audiences responded, and his unique style. He saw potential in the young singer, who was now being billed as the Hillbilly Cat. By the end of 1955, Parker had convinced Elvis to leave his previous manager, Bob Neal, and signed him to a new contract. Parker argued that Neal couldn't get Elvis the big bookings he needed, and Elvis agreed. In late 1955, Colonel Tom Parker persuaded Sam Phillips to sell Elvis's contract and the rights to all previously recorded material to RCA Records for $35,000 and $5,000 in back royalties. It was a huge sum of money for a record contract at the time, and Phillips jumped at the chance. He knew that his small, independent record company couldn't take Elvis's career to the next level, but RCA could. The sale also provided Phillips with the capital he needed to keep Sun Records going and sign other artists like Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Johnny Cash. Elvis never forgot what Sam Phillips had done for him. Sam was his mentor, producer, and business manager. But Elvis always said that the person who really discovered him was Marion Kasker. Marion had kept his telephone number, understood what Sam was looking for, and encouraged him to call Elvis. That woman was the one who had faith. She was the one who pushed me, Elvis said. Marion did it for me. RCA Records took a big risk investing so much in Elvis, but they saw his potential. Elvis's live performances were already causing a sensation. He would come on stage dressed in flashy outfits, pause to let the audience take him in, and then launch into a high-energy performance. His movements, facial expressions, and comments were all designed to get the crowd excited. At a concert in Jacksonville, Florida, Elvis finished his set by teasing the crowd. "Girls, I'll see you all backstage." The audience went wild, and fans stormed the backstage area, tearing at Elvis's clothes and trying to grab anything they could. It was a clear sign that Elvis Presley was about to become a phenomenon. Elvis and his band continued to perform live, and their shows fueled record sales. By the time RCA signed him, Elvis was already making waves. A country and western music magazine named him the best new male singer, and at a convention of country disc jockeys, he received numerous accolades. The DJs voted "Baby, Let's Play House" one of the year's top hits, named Elvis the 13th most played artist on country radio, and voted him the most promising country and western artist in the country. Minnie Pearl, a country performer, remembered, "Believe me, they had him on display." Elvis Presley was on his way to becoming a legend. On March 24, 1956, Elvis Presley made his final appearance on CBS Stage Show, a TV variety program hosted by big band leaders Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey. Jimmy Dorsey introduced Elvis with a bit of excitement, saying, "Well, we're gonna get things started out with a young fellow who's making his 6th appearance on Stage Show. He's that dynamic singer of songs who incidentally leaves for Hollywood tonight for a screen test. We wish him a lot of luck. Here he is, Elvis Presley." Elvis stepped onto the stage with confidence, dressed in a light-colored, sharkskin suit, a black shirt, and a white tie. His hair, greased back into a huge pompadour with what looked like blonde highlights, caught the spotlight. His pale skin and dark eyeshadow made him stand out against the black backdrop. As he stepped behind the microphone, the spotlight was solely on him, and his backup band Scotty Moore on lead guitar, Bill Black on bass, and DJ Fontana on drums waited in the shadows. Elvis began to strum his guitar and launched into "Money Honey," a rhythm and blues hit originally recorded by Clyde McPhatter and the Drifters. The audience cheered as Elvis sang, "It's money, honey, if you want to get along with me." The song was about how money was more important than anything else, even love. Elvis's performance was electrifying. He copied the Drifters' version but added his own touch, blending R&B with country-style hiccups. He smiled and sneered as he sang, and the audience went wild during the musical bridge when he shook his hips and wiggled his legs. At the end, he bowed dramatically, touching the floor, and then stood up, cradling his guitar and winking at the cheering crowd. Elvis's performance of "Money Honey" was a perfect example of the rock and roll that was taking over the country in 1956. It showed how Elvis could mix rhythm and blues with country and western music. Some people were shocked by his nonconformist look and energetic style, but most loved it. The song's message about money and material goods resonated with the times. In the 1950s, everyone wanted more, and Elvis's music captured that feeling. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, summed it up. "When I met Elvis, he only had about $1 million worth of talent. Now he has $1 million. As 1956 began, RCA Records and Colonel Tom Parker had a plan to make Elvis a national star. RCA had the resources to produce and promote Elvis's music, and Colonel Parker knew how to market him. Television was the key. By 1956, more than half of American homes had a TV, and the Colonel saw this as a way to get Elvis in front of millions of people. That's why he arranged for Elvis to appear on Stage Show and other TV programs. On December 2nd, 1955, RCA re-released Elvis's Last Son Records hit, "I Forgot to Remember to Forget," along with 4 other songs. The next day, a full-page ad appeared in Billboard magazine. The ad featured a striking photo of Elvis performing, with his legs spread and his pelvis thrust forward, playing his guitar with his eyes closed. The headline read, "The most talked about new personality in the last 10 years of recorded music." The ad made Elvis impossible to ignore. On January 10th, 1956, Elvis recorded his first session for RCA in Nashville. Meanwhile, news stories hyped his upcoming appearance on Stage Show. Elvis's career was picking up speed, and the world was about to fall in love with the hillbilly cat, who was becoming a rock and roll sensation. Elvis's first TV appearance on the Dorsey Brothers Stage Show in January 1956 didn't exactly set the world on fire. The show was pretty low-key, and the audience was mostly older folks who weren't sure what to make of this wild young man with the slicked-back hair and the flashy clothes. Elvis and his band, Scotty Moore and Bill Black, played 2 songs, a medley of Shake, Rattle, and Roll, and Flip, Flop, and Fly, followed by Ray Charles's I Got a Woman. The crowd's reaction was pretty lukewarm, but it was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Elvis appeared on the Dorsey Brothers show 3 more times. Each performance was a bit better than the last. On February 4th, he sang "Baby, Let's Play House" and "Tutti Frutti." Then on February 11th, he debuted 2 new songs he had just recorded for RCA, Blue Suede Shoes and Heartbreak Hotel. For his final appearance on the show in February, he played Tutti Frutti and I Was the One. The Dorsey brothers were impressed enough to invite him back for 2 more shows. By his 3rd appearance, Heartbreak Hotel was starting to climb the charts, thanks to all the TV exposure. Elvis's newfound fame led to his first album, simply titled Elvis Presley. The album cover was a game changer. It featured a close-up of Elvis playing his guitar, eyes shut, mouth wide open and screaming out a song. The background was a bright pink and green, with his name in bold letters. It was a bold, daring image that perfectly captured the essence of this new star. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, wasted no time in capitalizing on his rising star. He booked Elvis for concerts across the country and landed him more TV appearances. One of the first big gigs was a 2-week engagement at the New Frontier Hotel in Las Vegas. Unfortunately, it didn't go so well. The audience was mostly middle-aged and didn't understand what Elvis was all about. They were more into big band music and comedy acts. Elvis and his band, now including drummer DJ Fontana, tried their best, but the older crowd just didn't get it. The critics were harsh, comparing Elvis to a jug of corn liquor at a champagne party. Despite the setback in Las Vegas, Elvis's luck changed when he discovered a song called Hound Dog at a lounge in the Sahara. He loved the version by Freddie Bell and the Bellboys and decided to add it to his repertoire. The song would become one of his biggest hits. Elvis's next big TV appearance was on Milton Berle's show on April 3, 1956. He performed Blue Suede Shoes and had the audience, mostly young sailors and their dates, on their feet. But it was his second appearance on Berle's show on June 5th that really made waves. Elvis, dressed in a black and white outfit that echoed the hip zoot suit look of the 1940s, sang a wild and intense version of Hound Dog. His performance was so raw and energetic that it shocked many viewers. Some critics called it vulgar and tasteless, but young people were mesmerized. The controversy only fueled Elvis's popularity. Just a few weeks later, he appeared on Steve Allen's show, dressed in a tuxedo and singing to a basset hound. The performance was tame compared to his usual shows, and many fans were disappointed, but it didn't stop Elvis. The next day, he went into the studio and recorded Hound Dog, which quickly became a hit. Hound Dog captured the essence of rock and roll, its energy, its rebellion, and its raw sexuality. Teenagers loved it, and Elvis became the king of rock and roll. Despite the criticism and the challenges, Elvis Presley had arrived, and he was here to stay. Elvis's star continued to soar during the summer of 1956. Along with Hound Dog, 2 more of his songs, I Want You, I Need You, I Love You, and Don't Be Cruel, hit the #1 spot on the Billboard charts. It was like a big train from Memphis, and Elvis was picking up speed. He was everywhere on TV, in magazines, and on the radio. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, landed him a movie deal with Hal Wallis, a famous Hollywood producer. The deal promised 7 movies, and Elvis was thrilled. Since he was a kid, he dreamed of making movies like James Dean and Tony Curtis. Wallis even compared Elvis to Marlon Brando and James Dean, which made Elvis feel like he was really making it. Elvis arrived in Hollywood on August 17th, excited to start his first acting job at 20th Century Fox Studios. He was pumped because the movie, tentatively called The Reno Brothers, was a historical drama set during the Civil War, the best part. The producers didn't want him to sing in the movie. Elvis wanted to be a good actor because he believed you couldn't build a whole career just on singing. He used Frank Sinatra as an example, saying that Sinatra only became a big star after he started acting, but things didn't go as planned. When Elvis got to the set, he was handed a new script. This one had him singing 4 songs. The first, Love Me Tender, was a pretty ballad based on an old folk song called Ora Lee. Elvis's performance was so good that the producers changed the movie's title to Love Me Tender. The other 3 songs were more like the sugary, over-the-top tunes you'd hear in a 1950s musical. Elvis wasn't happy, but he did his best. The movie ended up being a big hit. When it opened at the Paramount Theater in New York City, there was a huge 15-foot cutout of Elvis holding his guitar, dressed as his character. The marquee read, "Elvis Presley in Love Me Tender," starts Thursday 15 at NY Paramount. People couldn't ignore it, and the movie became a box office smash. The title song was released as a single and hit #1 on the charts. Elvis's fans loved him, even if the film critics didn't. While Elvis was becoming a superstar, Colonel Parker was working hard to keep him in the spotlight. He sent out news releases and gave tips to teen magazines and gossip columnists. The media couldn't get enough of Elvis. His face was on the covers of movie and fan magazines, and headlines like, "Is he a new James Dean?" and "Movieland's Next Great Lover" drew millions of readers. Parker also brought in H.G. Saperstein and Howard Bell to promote Elvis merchandise. They were experts at marketing stuff, like the Lone Ranger and Davy Crockett. The results were amazing. Fans could buy Elvis socks, shirts, skirts, sweaters, hats, charm bracelets, bubble gum cards, pencils, bookcases, bookends, combs, soft drinks, and even glow-in-the-dark pictures of Elvis. One of the best-selling items was Elvis lipstick, which came in colors like Tutti Frutti Red, Heartbreak Pink, and Hound Dog Orange. Over 450,000 units were sold, each one supposedly individually autographed. Another company made flasher buttons that changed shape and pictures when you moved them. There was even an Elvis look-alike doll for $3.98, which promised to be your companion morning, noon, and nighttime too. Stores were setting up displays as fast as they could, and teenagers were rushing to buy Elvis products at places like Macy's, Sears, and Woolworths. Even though Elvis only got about 3 cents for every item sold, by the end of 1957, he had made about $55 million for merchandise. H.G. Saperstein explained to Newsweek that this kind of fame was nothing new. It had happened with stars like Valentino, Theda Bara, and Clara Bow. People want to feel connected to someone who is somebody, and Elvis products let teenagers join a new rock and roll community. Elvis's popularity spread across different media. He was in newspapers, magazines, on TV, and in stores. Prislamania reached new heights after his appearances on Ed Sullivan's show. Sullivan's show was one of the most popular on Sunday nights, and at first, Sullivan didn't want Elvis on his show. He said, "I wouldn't have him on my show at any price." But as Elvis's fame grew, Sullivan changed his mind. He paid Elvis $50,000 for 3 appearances, which was a record at the time. Sullivan promised that his show's standards would stay high, and that Elvis wouldn't do anything suggestive. Elvis's first appearance on Sullivan's show was on September 9th. Sullivan was in the hospital after a car accident, so Charles Laughton hosted. Elvis performed Don't Be Cruel, Love Me Tender, Hound Dog, and a wild version of Little Richard's Ready Teddy. The teenagers in the audience went wild, and Laughton said, "Well, what did someone say? Music hath charms to soothe the savage beast." Sullivan was happy to see the show get the highest rating ever, with 82.6% of the TV audience watching. Elvis appeared again on October 28th and January 6, 1957. For his third appearance, the cameras only showed him from the waist up, but his performance was still amazing. He did a fast-paced medley of his hits, and a touching rendition of the spiritual Peace in the Valley. After the performance, Ed Sullivan praised Elvis, saying he was a real decent, fine boy. This endorsement made a big difference, showing that despite his wild looks and style, Elvis was a good person. In just 1 year, Elvis had become an American icon. He had 18 hits on the Billboard charts, a best-selling album, a box office smash movie, and a ton of merchandise. His dad couldn't believe it. He said, "The last thing I remember is that I was working in a little all-paint factory and you were driving a truck." But not everyone was a fan. Many people, especially adults, saw Elvis as a threat. They thought he was untalented, indecent, and a bad influence. Critics said he incited riots, encouraged sexual deviancy, and promoted juvenile delinquency. Some even called him a communist or the Antichrist. A motivational research study claimed that Elvis fans were often rebels and misanthropes. A psychologist said that the need to be needed explained both Elvis fans and hardened criminals. A magazine article compared rock and roll to primitive cults, and Cardinal Stritch denounced the tribal rhythms of rock and roll in a church letter. Racism and fears of miscegenation and juvenile delinquency were big factors in the backlash. Elvis was seen as a white kid who dressed and moved like a black person, which made many white adults and the media very upset. Some black adults were also concerned, worried that Elvis was crossing the racial line. A black disc jockey, Nat D. Williams, was shocked to see young black girls screaming at an Elvis concert and wondered why they were so excited about a white boy from Memphis. In 1956 and 1957, Elvis became the main target of those who wanted to protect American culture. Parents, ministers, teachers, and other adults believed that Elvis the Pelvis had to be stopped to save young people and the country. In Ottawa, girls were suspended from a Catholic school for attending an Elvis concert. In San Francisco, 2 girls were expelled for winning a Why I Love Elvis contest. Some radio stations refused to play Elvis's songs, and a disc jockey in Nashville burned 600 Elvis records in a public park. A used car dealer in Cincinnati promised to break 50 Elvis records for every car he sold that day. He quickly sold 5. A columnist in Toronto started an Elvis Presley club, and a high school principal in Texas banned Elvis records at school dances. The editors of Music Journal called Elvis's performances leering, whining, moaning, and filthy. Despite the backlash, Elvis's fame only grew. He was a sensation, and his impact on music and culture was undeniable. Elvis Presley wasn't just a singer, he was a phenomenon. In just 1 year, he went from being a little-known country singer to the biggest star in America. People either loved him or hated him, but no one could ignore him. He was the young prince of rock and roll, and before he was done, he would be crowned the king of rock and roll. Elvis didn't invent rock and roll, but he sure made it popular. He had 101 hits on the top 40 charts, including 18 that hit number 1. His music was a mix of R&B, pop, and country, and it spoke directly to teenagers. Songs like Heartbreak Hotel and Love Me Tender were about teenage love, while Blue Suede Shoes and Hound Dog were about teenage bravado and fun. Elvis could rock with the best of them and then slow down to a ballad that made girls swoon. But why was Elvis so successful? For starters, teenagers loved his music. They thought he was cool, sexy, and different. His style, from his slicked back hair and long sideburns to his wild clothes and uninhibited performances, was unlike anything they had seen before. Elvis connected with young people on a level that no other artist could. He talked about their interests, values, and desires. As he said, "I watch my audience and I listen to them, and I know that we're all getting something out of our systems, but none of us knows what it is." For many girls, it was simple. Elvis was the best-looking and sexiest guy they had ever seen. His bedroom eyes, the sneer on his lip, and his sexy moves were magnetic. At concerts, girls would go wild. Sonny West, a friend of Elvis's, remembered a concert where his date, a picture of innocence, turned into a sex-starved little nymphet when Elvis started performing. Every time Elvis moved, it seemed like 100 girls were losing their minds. His sexuality was powerful, but it wasn't just about being sexy. Girls and women of all ages were drawn to his charm, charisma, and constant flirting. He had a way of making every girl feel special. Elvis's sound was also unique. It blended black rhythm and blues, white country, and traditional pop. Sam Phillips, who discovered Elvis, said he had a white voice, but sang with a Negro rhythm that borrowed from country music. Other white singers had tried to copy rhythm and blues, but Elvis lived it and felt it. His version of Hound Dog is a perfect example. Initially, the song's writers, Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller, thought Elvis's version sounded too white and nervous. But once the royalties started rolling in, they realized how wrong they had been. Elvis's Hound Dog was full of youthful energy, subversive lyrics, and an explosive sound that captured the hearts of white teenagers. The more adults were turned off by it, the more young people tuned in. Elvis's success wasn't just about his looks or his sound. It was about timing. He came along at a time when people were looking for something different. As he humbly said, "I happened to come along at a time in the music business when there was no trend. I was lucky. The people were looking for something different, I came along just in time. Elvis Presley wasn't just a star. He was a symbol of a generation. He spoke to the hearts of teenagers and became the voice of their rebellion, their dreams, and their fun. Whether you loved him or hated him, Elvis changed the world of music forever. He was more than just a singer, he was a legend.